Do you need to go to business school to start a business? This is the Kawartha Small Business Podcast, and we've got business conversations for the Kawartha commute. I'm Brian Rump from U Group.
And I'm Matt Garrity from Matty G Digital. So, Brian, who's more likely to succeed? Someone that's been to business school, had a background in business, maybe got an MBA, or some sort of business owner that's going to just start because they have a passion?
Well, I think that's a great question, and we hear it all the time. I think both obviously have a good chance at success, but I think probably for a small business, the better place to start is with a passion and being really good at something.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
I feel like most of the business owners that I know from around Kawarthas even specifically, it's a lot more they had a passion, an interest, sometimes even a hobby. Like I like working with hobby businesses that want to take off. Of course, there is a lot of family business stuff that's been inherited and those people working hard to continue to grow that business. But I'm always surprised to see the amount of small business owners that, let's say, I don't know if this is a cliche or inappropriate, but like kind of start from nothing. They've got a passion. They're like, man, I love digital marketing. I think I'm good at talking, and kind of just taking it from there.
Yeah, I think so. As we were preparing for this episode, I was starting to think about in my own career. So, for a long time, I was a commercial banker locally, and then I've worked with companies to get grants for their businesses. So I've sat in hundreds of offices, boardrooms, kitchen tables with business owners. And for the small businesses, I could probably count on one hand the number who have some sort of business school.
Yeah.
I think I might have met one who has like an MBA, if you look at sort of graduate business school. So almost all the other ones will say something like, I'm not a numbers person, or I didn't go to business school, but here's what I'm really good at. So, without a lot of, background or knowledge, they jump in and they usually know a lot more than they think they know about business and what they're doing. But in terms of that formal education, I don't think, it's a mandatory ingredient. And this might be a good spot for me to provide some full disclosure and some of my biases, but I do teach at the Fleming College School of Business. So I do, highly advocate for, some level of business school. I personally love the college level for business education.
Why do you love the college level?
Partly because I've been through it. So my background, I did an undergrad at Trent University in Canadian Studies. And when I left, pretty much every job wanted some kind of experience or background in either marketing, accounting, human resources,
sure,
something that had to do with business. So I went to Fleming for a 2-year just general business program. And the faculty were amazing, and I learned, a whole lot that just helped me sort of get my foot into the door of working for me in banking. So I really liked that, and I think there was a lot of good stuff to learn there, and it's a decent path. And we could argue the semantics of what is a business school, if we mean some level of college, if we mean university, if we mean MBA. But to be honest, in my career in small business, and also knowing people with things like MBAs, very few MBAs that I know have started a small business. A lot of them end up working in the government or bigger organizations. That said, that could change at any time. But, I think that especially a small business, there's obviously a lot you need to know, but you can learn that without going in that business school route.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of interesting for me, like when you asked the question, or I asked the question, I guess, about like business school, I immediately thought university, MBA, etc. I also went to college, went to George Brown for a few years and graduated with like an advanced diploma in business administration. I went down a bit of a route of like a professional sales certificate with as a student, which I received as well. But I still think this whole business that I run, Matty G Digital for digital marketing, is more to do with like a passion and being aware of my strengths the last couple of years. I think I probably started off a little bit better off than I may have because I did have at least some sort of business background, which I think I've experienced with working and seeing other people operate, how not having a business background can be challenging out of the gate, maybe long term with running any sort of business. But yeah, I definitely started mine, to be honest with you. I don't usually, I don't think of my schooling as something that's been super beneficial, which is awful to say because I forget when I graduated. It's at least 10 years ago. It's longer than that. It's probably 15 years ago. Now, that doesn't make sense either mathematically. Like, I was in business, and you can correct me in a second here, but I don't know if we touched on anything, literally nothing about digital marketing 10, 12 years ago. And I've heard,
probably.
you can correct me, but I've heard it's similar today.
Yeah, so I don't teach digital marketing. So I can't really comment on that. I think one of the interesting things about business school and is that you don't necessarily learn how to run a business per se, but you learn a lot of the fundamentals,
Sure.
and you learn a lot about, I like to look at it as what's available. So what's your toolbox for running a business? What's some of the language of business, so that when you get into your own idea, you at least have a body of information to draw on. When you're going into college and you're, some people are 18, 20 years old. What I see a lot, which I think is interesting, is you'll get people doing second careers. So you get a big, long, wide weight or age range. People who maybe have a business idea. Some people don't necessarily have a clear idea. So it's hard to really teach, here's how to do this, here's how to do that. When I took marketing, Facebook didn't exist.
Yeah.
When I was in college, the first time I heard about Facebook was actually from a classmate who had just heard about it, and it was just sort of starting up and getting popular. So things change, and there's still some say marketing fundamentals that haven't really changed.
Sure.
But as you know, in marketing, how to do it day to day changes all the time. So really, you need to learn some of the frameworks of how to learn and adapt in that industry.
Absolutely. And like, not to discredit the school or education or even my own like diploma from George Brown from business, but I feel like almost everything I do today in my day-to-day business is because of things that I've learned after the fact.
Yeah.
I always tell people I went to business school, but I've been working professionally, like in an office, if that makes me more professional. Yeah. But I've been working in an office since like day one after school, like in an office setting for the first like 7 years of my career, and then another 2.5, and then another office for a year. And that's where I've learned, in my opinion, to kind of grow and develop my skills today, more so than everything I learned back in school.
Yeah. And I think, it is a lifelong education. Like any education, you'll always be learning. One of the challenges with business school, one of my favorite podcasts that talks about this is the Story Brand podcast. And they talked about, you're trying to learn things that you don't realize you're going to need to learn for maybe another 10 years in your life. And how, you go to business school and you study like an ad from the 1970s, or you read a white paper about trade in China, but they say, but you don't know how to do things like clarify a message, build a sales funnel, run a meeting, hire someone, fire someone, negotiate your salary, give a speech. Uh, some schools do better than others at some of those elements, but it's just a lot to learn, and it's hard to learn it all in such a short period of time. But it sets you on the right course. But that said, anyone who's opening and thinking about opening a business can round out their skills and learn, what they need to learn along the way.
For sure. And how often are those courses and programs actually teaching people how to start a business?
Yeah, I don't think the actual how to start it is fairly rare. We do have, at least from what I see, there's some projects and programs where if people are entrepreneurial, they'll tailor their assignments around the business that they want to run and sort of figuring that out. But just the whole concept of how do I start a business, it's funny because that's rarely taught anywhere, even seminars in the community. You kind of have to figure it out yourself a little bit, that how do I start? Because there's some different options of how you start. There's some different entities you can walk through, and it's hard to even have those conversations too early if you don't know what you're doing quite yet. So it's kind of messy and scrappy, and that's Michelle Romanow from the Dragon's Den, talks about in her speaking, like getting scrappy, right? So you need to learn how to get scrappy, which is, I think, why, in her quote is about education teaches greatness and being really good at business, but to survive in small business, you need to be scrappy, and it doesn't matter about being perfect and excellent and, high level. It's about sort of getting it done.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I talk to and I love working with budding entrepreneurs. I'd like to say it, maybe mentor them, which is kind of scary to think I'm giving people advice on how to do this. However, I can think of like a half dozen like budding entrepreneurs that are like looking to leave their existing company or have just like really started to create in their mind a business. And their first question is, it's scary question every time. Like, where do I start? And I'm like, I don't say this, but in my mind, I'm like, that's a good question. Like, where do you even start?
Yeah, I don't know either. And I think for everyone, it's different, and why it's good to have, mentors or people that can bring a framework of experience. At the same time, you shouldn't overly listen to your mentors. Like there's never a perfect path. Nobody's going to say, here's exactly what to do. And you will, it will be perfect. Maybe you get lucky and that happens, but you realize that you're the one that's in charge. So
Yeah,
you have to be sort of the CEO of your own business. And you have to learn how to ask for and get help, understand it's the right help. So it's not easy. Um, you know, Example, you're really good at marketing. You're helping people with their marketing, but you could be completely wrong, right?
oh,
So people have to learn enough to trust you and let you do a lot of the work. But also, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are, in charge of, having something to market and being in control of that.
for sure. And I experience it a lot when I talk to people where they're running like 100 miles a minute, and it almost feels like they're worried about things that aren't a priority yet. And you kind of need to refocus those people and tell them like this is where you need to start. And my mind always, like you said, goes to marketing first. And the first thing I recommend to people is to come up. This is like, it might sound too simple, but it's come up with an elevator pitch, which is your 30 to 60-second explanation to someone as to what you and your business do. And I always say, like, you don't want to be at a coffee shop or in a grocery line and someone's like, oh, so you have like your own business. What do you do? And then you're just like bumbling and not able to answer. Like,
Oh
that's
yeah,
number one, in my opinion. And that's a marketing thing of being able to communicate what it is you do.
Yeah, that's the clarifying your message, right? So clarifying your message and then building your sales funnel because you're going to need sales to do
Yeah.
whatever it is you want to do.
That's number
No,
like four in my mind is would have been like prospecting. Like that's one of the first things I did when I started my own business is I still have the piece of paper somewhere and I almost want to frame it because it's an interesting story to how I got there and everything. But it almost was like the catalyst for starting my business where one day I came home and I made a list of all the people that I know that run businesses that I could offer help to. And then a
yeah,
list of just prospects and former people that I used to work with and know and all that kind of stuff. So then that day one of my business of Matty G Digital, I could basically reach out and call all those people. And like, I think
yeah.
that's
You
something
were,
forgotten with a lot of stuff, like the
yeah.
basic prospecting, referrals, utilizing friends and family. You're not bowing over or begging for work. It's just now a matter of you have your elevator pitch and
Well,
telling
people
people
want to know what you're doing, right?
help you. They can't refer you to people if they don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah. And if you're spotting a need, people need that. Like they need to know you exist and
Yes.
that you do it, right? So that's part of it.
And now,
Now tell me, oh, I was just going to ask a little bit more about your business and why you started it.
oh, that's a long one. But if I could quickly
Distill it quick, as
distill
quick as possible.
just so we can get this through the Kawartha commute. I recognized how much I liked working with small business owners specifically. I don't particularly like working with large corporations and hierarchies. I like working with small business owners because they're extremely passionate about what they do and they're able to move things forward. And I recognize that agencies specifically really aren't able to help a lot of those small business owners, especially in smaller communities for resource reasons and budgetary reasons, to be super honest. There's 100,000 probably other reasons. I'm a big believer in being responsible for my own livelihood. And it's not a control thing. Maybe it is, but I'm to the point in my life where I need to be the one that is in control of my livelihood, my family's livelihood, my own goals, my financial goals, all that kind of stuff. And the only way I can do that is if I was behind the wheel, if that's fair.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is a good leading question into want to talk with small businesses, some of the maybe strategy theories that we could talk about. And one of those is what we call the models for above average returns. So anytime you're trying to make money, it's really hard to beat the average and be consistently above average. That's a very sort of quick and dirty way of saying that. And when we break it down, there's typically two ways that we can seek those above average returns. One is called the industry organization model, which is where you're really responding to the external environment. So it'd be like, hey, I want to get into X industry because I hear it's good and makes money. The other one, which I think you probably fit into, and most of our listeners would be what we call the resources based model. It's like where you look at the resources you have, whether it's money, equipment, in most cases, it's knowledge and skills and expertise, and then pursue your business strategy that way. And it sounds to me like you really went that way, looking at, here's my list
Yeah.
of prospects I have from my knowledge. You have an expertise and skill and started your business that way, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a reason you went to digital marketing and not, say, running an ice cream stand at the end of your driveway.
That. But yeah, it was very much around that. Like I had been working in digital marketing for 5 years, kind of thrust into that and learning on the fly. Uh, I recognized like listening to other people in a positive way, not letting your head blow up or get too big that you can't walk through the door, but recognizing like what are people saying about you in a positive way, and like what are some of your positive characteristics, skills, and abilities. And I forget where I heard this. It might have been, not to reference Dragon's Den again, it was on Shark Tank, and it may have been um, Mark Cuban or um, who's the Fubu guy?
I don't really watch that show, so I don't know all their names.
One of them said something along the lines like, stop paying attention to the things that you're not good at. Because there is like a bit of an emphasis in society where it's like, find out what you're not good at and make yourself better at them. But
Oh
kind of
yeah,
head, like, find out what you're good at and keep pushing that and just ignore the stuff that you're not good at. And I think that's
yeah,
actually pretty positive to listen to. And anyways, I started hearing like, okay, you're good at account management. You're friendly. You're a nice guy. People trust you. And in my head, I'm like, what the heck am I going to do with that? Like, what value how can I
yeah,
monetize being a good guy?
yeah,
Um, kind of paired that up with my passion of digital marketing and having a passion working with business owners. And honestly, it did just so happen that this industry organization model where you're talking here about like being dictated by the external environment where I can make an effective, good living, I was like, that's just a bonus. And I did kind of
yeah.
feel like there's like a good livelihood there if I were to follow this path versus, like you said, selling ice cream at the bottom of my driveway, which by all accounts, I probably would have been pretty good at.
Yeah, yeah, it could. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think again, it's the resources. You're selling your skills. What I see, to bring it to small businesses, especially in the Kawarthas, locally small towns. Most people start a business because a couple different things. One is you think you can manage it better. So you say, "Hey, I really know this. I'm really good at it. I can run a better business than the place I'm working at." The other is, I think, like you're a top performer, and you want more risk and reward. So you see it as being in charge of your own career, your own living. So you want to be in the driver's seat
For sure.
for that. And then the other is just seeing those opportunities that nobody's seizing. So like,
Yeah.
why doesn't this exist? Why isn't there somebody who's doing this? We see that all the time. Smaller service-based businesses, they might be just looking around and saying, how come nobody's doing this? And then think, hey, I can do that. And there you go. There's your business. And you can get going and you get started. And then you can learn along the way what you don't know. There's lots of people who can help you out along the way with the places that maybe are gaps.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a ridiculous thought too, but sometimes I think that everything that is going to be invented in this world has already been invented, and we sometimes think that someone else is already doing this, so I don't need to handle this. But that's like on a macro level. If you start like looking more smaller, like even within your own community, there might not be people in that community doing this very broad, big thing that everyone else
Oh
all
yeah.
is. And that's where those little opportunities exist in like a very big way.
Yeah, I think when we look at innovation, especially invention, there's are things that get invented, discovered, invented, but most innovations are new uses for existing things. One of my favorite stories with innovation is the Swiffer. Most people have a Swiffer, but nothing in the Swiffer was invented. It was all things that existed somewhere else. And, one of the original ideas for that, which I love, is like a diaper wipe on a stick was, the vision for that. And then they brought together, different things that were already um, in existence to make what's turned into, I think, a at least $1 billion brand, right? For diaper rags or diaper wipes on a stick.
Yeah, it's a
So
mop bucket attached to a mop, if you think about it.
yeah, yeah. So there's lots you can do with that. One of the tips, for getting, into business and getting started and maybe feeling that hesitation of I'm not a business person, or I hear all the time people like, I'm not a numbers person, is learning where to get the right type of help.
Yep.
I always say, understand what you're great at and do the things you're really great at. Uh, get help for the things you suck at. So if you're not good at it, you can get some help. Then the one I throw in is being cautious about the things that you're good at or okay at. Because one of the big things we see with small businesses, especially near the start, is you'll start taking on too much work. Some of it's the stuff you're amazing at, some of it's you're good at it and it's okay. But that's where you could get in trouble is, sort of falling down that trap of doing a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is focus on what you're great at, and understand that things are never going to be even close to perfect, and it's going to be hard. And if you feel stuck, that's how you're supposed to feel most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. And just to kind of wrap it up and say something similar to what you said, and just maybe a longer way, is I was talking to someone a week ago that was, let's just say, thrust into being self-employed. And they, throughout the last couple of months, just been kind of scrambling to figure it all out. And he's running all over the place like a chicken with his head cut off. He's worried about finances and income tax and selling and administration and all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm trying to calm him down, telling him he's actually doing great out of the gate because he's had business, a good amount of business, making more money now than he was when he was employed. And I told him, like, this is normal because right now, like,
very normal.
You had no background in business. You had no interest in being a business owner, maybe even 6 months ago, 3 months ago when this happened. You probably would not have chosen this. But you've actually now done the hardest thing of all this stuff, like figuring out finances. Like the hardest thing is getting business and getting sales.
Oh, yeah.
And that. Honestly, and you might disagree with me, I was like, don't worry about the rest of it. Put your head down. Make
you can solve it. You can work through it. Yeah. It's you need the sales funnel, right? You need sales.
So like my advice and like tip and summary of all this is like, if you're going to start a business, like put your head down and do what you're good at and worry about all the other stuff later as it comes necessary. I'm 1.5 years into my business. There's a couple things that I won't even say out loud that I've not done for business. There's like I'm just in the process now of hiring an accountant, bookkeeper 1.5 years later. Little certain things like that. It takes a long time to figure all this stuff out, and it's not always a priority. Just focus on getting some of that business and doing what you're good at.
Oh, definitely. That's good. Anything else to add?
No, I think that is just about everything. Like I was saying, put your head down, hashtag Nike, just do it, and
all right,
figure it out as you go. I think most business owners probably might laugh at that at first, but then the more I think about their own experiences, like, yeah, that's probably pretty fair.
Pretty much how it goes. So awesome.
I've been in business for 10 plus years, 20 years. They're still trying to figure it out. They're coming to me talking about marketing and like they don't have a clue. And that's a good thing for me because I have a clue. And if they had a clue, they wouldn't be talking to me. But
they would know how to do it already.
Exactly. So it'll all come, and it's just a matter of like take that passion and put your head down and run with it.
All right. Well, that sounds like an episode to me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you'd like to talk about this some more, reach out to us and we'll set it up.